Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a phenomenon that literally borders on the impossible. Our single teaching document for this journey is a fascinating text by spiritual researcher Anthony Alvarez, titled The Perennial Truth. Now, whether you're a lifelong skeptic, a devout believer, or just a pattern seeker who loves connecting the dots of world history, this explainer is going to give you a structured look at one of the oldest, most mind-bending philosophical frameworks ever recorded. So let's get right to it.
I want to kick things off by posing a serious question to you. How is it mathematically, historically, and logically possible that entirely separated ancient cultures, civilizations that never met, never traded, never even shared a language, somehow reached the exact same cosmological conclusions? Think about it. We're talking about ancient Egyptians, the Vedic seers of India, indigenous shamans of the Americas, and early Gnostic Christians, all drawing the exact same spiritual map.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp what's going on here, we need to get our definitions straight. According to Alvarez's text, this cross-cultural consensus is what's known as the perennial philosophy. And just to be clear, this isn't some single religion or a modern New Age invention. As outlined in the source, it's a framework of core truths that has appeared independently in virtually every major culture across human history. It's essentially a shared vocabulary of the human experience, and it predates our modern institutions by thousands of years. To wrap our heads around this massive concept, we're going to break Alvarez's text into 5 quick sections today. 1. The universal spiritual thread. 2. 4 claims of reality. 3. The esoteric pillars. 4. Belief versus direct experience. And finally, Section 5, texts as inner maps. All right, starting with Section 1, the universal spiritual thread. So, looking at the world today, human religions seem incredibly fragmented, right? Just full of conflicting doctrines and competing claims. But Alvarez argues that this fragmentation is actually just a surface-level illusion. Let's look at the basic probability for a second. When 9 entirely independent civilizations, completely isolated from one another, develop identical spiritual and metaphysical systems, that completely defies random chance. It's like 9 people in different rooms writing the exact same novel. In probability theory, identical outcomes from independent variables point to a genuine underlying signal, not just historical noise. These ancient peoples weren't just guessing, they were independently observing the exact same reality. Moving right along to Section 2, 4 claims of reality.
If these cultures were all tuning into the same signal, what exactly were they seeing? Well, Alvarez distills their shared worldview down to 4 foundational claims. First up, there is a single ultimate reality, this infinite conscious ground that underlies all of existence. Second, within every human being exists a divine spark that is absolutely not separate from that ultimate reality. Third, the entire purpose of human existence is the direct, first-person experience of this reality. And fourth, all authentic spiritual traditions, once you strip away their cultural clothing, are simply different methods pointing you toward this exact direct experience. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The esoteric pillars.
To hold this massive worldview up, Alvarez outlines 5 esoteric pillars acting as structural support across all these different civilizations. Pillar 1, consciousness is primary, meaning matter emerges from mind, not the other way around. Pillar 2, everything is one unified source. Pillar 3, the universe is layered. Basically, existence has multiple dimensions occupying the same space at different frequencies. Pillar 4, humanity is spiritually evolving. And Pillar 5, this knowledge has been preserved esoterically. This means it was often hidden or fiercely protected by the mystics within the major traditions. Which brings us to Section 4, belief versus direct experience.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the major paradigm shift the source introduces here. There is this deep tension, right? Institutional religion largely asks its followers to adopt external beliefs, recite creeds, and perform communal rituals. It kind of focuses heavily on compliance and external authority. The perennial truth, on the other hand, is entirely about direct inner experience and personal transformation. It argues that you literally do not need an intermediary, a priest, or an institution to access the divine, because the divine is already your innermost nature. And you can see this chorus effect so clearly across the traditions. Look at this. Hinduism calls the ultimate reality Brahman and the inner divinity Atman. Buddhism calls it the Dharmakaya and the inner spark, the Buddha nature. In Sufism, it's Al-Haq and the Ruh. In Kabbalah, it's Ein Sof and the Neshama. They are using completely different cultural languages and historical maps, for sure, but they are mapping the exact same internal territory and the exact same path to union. Finally, we hit Section 5, texts as inner maps. So if the ultimate goal is direct internal experience, how are we supposed to actually read the ancient documents left behind by these traditions? Alvarez provides a really powerful reframing here. Sacred texts are maps of the inner landscape. The source argues that texts like the Bible, the Quran, or the Vedas weren't primarily written as historical records or literal science textbooks. If you read them literally, you're naturally going to bump into historical contradictions. But read them as cartographic guides, as allegories for the journey of human consciousness from ignorance to awakening, and suddenly all those contradictions just dissolve. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Take the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching as prime examples. On the surface, the Gita is about a warrior named Arjuna on a literal battlefield, right? And the Tao is a collection of 81 poems about nature and flow. But esoterically, the source explains that Arjuna's battlefield is actually the human mind struggling with the ego, and the Tao is an experiential guide to releasing ego-driven striving. They are simply different cartographic styles describing the exact same internal transformation. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, deeply personal invitation presented in Alvarez's text. The perennial philosophy isn't asking you to blindly believe anything. Instead, it's asking you to look directly at your own consciousness. Take a second right now and just ask yourself, what is the awareness that is reading these words or listening to this voice right now? What is that observing presence? It's a hugely provocative question, and according to the Perennial Truth, the answer to that question is the key to understanding the entire universe. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep asking questions.